Now, what did you wear in terms of like a base layer? And was there a concern about you sweating while you're pulling all that weight, especially initially when it was 375 pounds?
Yeah. So, one of the famous lines that, people who have been in the polar environments will say is, if you sweat, you die. And, it's maybe a little bit of hyperbole, but it's not far from the truth, which is you start sweating and you stop for even 30 seconds, your clothes are literally freezing to your body. And so it was this crazy kind of balance of being able to pull the sled, get your heart rate elevated enough to keep your body warm, but not too warm that you were sweating. And so any second I would start sweating, I would strip layers off. So there was times, especially when there was no wind, it'd still be ambient temperature, -20, -25, but I would just have like a thin Gore-Tex jacket on and one base layer. That's it. I mean,
were you wearing merino?
Merino actually itches my skin, although it's really good, but for me, I'm a little bit allergic to it. So I wear like synthetic fabric.
Do they have a synthetic that completely mimics merino in terms of the way when it's moist, you still stay warm?
Yeah. So merino, honestly, merino is amazing fabric for that reason. Unfortunately for me, like I said, it just irritates my skin.
It is so funny that you could suffer through all that, but you can't have itchy clothes on.
A little merino wool is gonna make me feel bad. So I use a synthetic, but it's
what
crazy.
Company are you using? Like what?
I was using Mountain Hardwear base layers, and then actually my outer layers was this Norwegian company called Bergens of Norway. They don't sponsor me, but they actually, believe it or not, the Norwegians know a thing or two about being in the polar environment, and so they've designed a really good jacket and pant that's actually really breathable and really good. And then I sewed a fur ruff onto the edge, so a wolf fur ruff on the outer side of the hood. I think it's wolf, yeah.
Wolf fur.
Wolf fur.
I thought you were saying wool. Well, then I was like, it sounds like wolf.
You know more about this than me. I'm not I hope I don't annoy your audience. I am not a big hunter myself. I've never done that, a lot of that. But yeah, that's a wolf fur.
Well, they know how to survive in the cold.
Yeah, exactly. So
now the base layer is a synthetic. What is the material that it's made out of?
The base layer is it's a synthetic, like a polypropylene, something
and so
like that.
When it sweats, it dries quickly. Is that the idea?
Yeah, so it sweats, it dries quickly. But the idea was just to not get it wet, so basically strip down as much as possible, but like literally I'd go from that, and then of course I needed to eat and drink every 30 minutes or whatever, actually more like every hour or so. I'd stop in the front of my sled. I had a huge puffy down jacket, like a massive, like Michelin Man, huge puffy down jacket. So even if you're stopping for a minute to drink water, before even trying to do that, boom, put the big jacket on, because that's how cold you can get immediately from stopping. I mean, it's just so much colder than when pulling the sled. Your heart rate stays up and keeps you pretty warm.
I would imagine like your hands and your feet too. That would be a real issue, right? The small digits.
Yeah, I mean, frostbite's real for sure. Hands outside of the gloves. That's why some of the stuff I was doing in the training of get my hands with the dexterity. You have to tie all these knots with big gloves, mittens on. You can't take your gloves off for any sizable period of time. If you look back on a lot of my photos, I've actually got tape on my face over across my nose and my cheeks. I saw that. And that's because I started getting tiny little bits of frostbite on the bottoms of my nose and on my cheeks, because I'd wear a full face mask, buff, everything, but even tiny little one needle prick of wind on your face throughout the day, and that cold, it's going to turn into a cold injury. And so I started getting a few cold injuries on my face. Nothing too bad. You're looking.
Do you grease your face up or anything? Like
mostly the tape, and then so I had a little bit of like Vaseline or like chapstick type of stuff on some of the bad areas. The one thing actually that I did that I'd never done before, but actually worked well, was a tip that I got, which was my fingers started cracking really, really bad from the cold. And so they were like really painful. And I actually was putting super glue into all of those basically little micro cuts on my fingers, which when someone told me that as a trick, I was like, really? But turns out it's actually a really good trick. So it's kind of super gluing these cuts on my fingers back together. And that actually worked reasonably well, all things considered. I mean, all things considered is the operative word, but it worked. Yeah.
Wow. So you're wearing what about your eyes?
So I'm wearing goggles, but funny enough, I had a couple of fancier, nicer ski goggles with me, but yeah, there's the tape on my face right there. But yeah, like that's actually just like the normal K-tube tape, like a physio tape that you'd see like athletes wearing. And I just had it in my repair kit. It wasn't meant for this purpose, but I was like, what do I have that I could put on my face to block it a little bit better? But I had those goggles on some of the time. But actually, the goggle that I wore the most was one that you might use for motocross, because it has like a plastic face mask over the front of of it because the wind, when it was blowing, it would just kind of blow around. So sometimes I had this fleece stripped over my face, but it would blow too much. And so I had this more plastic face mask. Yeah, so that's one you can see. Look how frozen it is on the inside.
That is so crazy. Oh my God, man.
There, and then like this neoprene mask underneath. So I had like double face mask, double tape, like anything to just, keep me warm.
I would never have suspected that it was so high above sea level there.
Yeah. So you've got whatever it is, 9,300 feet at the South Pole.
So it's basically just like elevated ground, but it seems flat.
Right, but I started at sea level. So I'm not only I'm actually going uphill all the way to the South Pole. So for the first 40-some days, I pulled that sled uphill completely.
Dude,
so it
you're
was
freaking me out. The whole thing freaks me out.